Hey everyone, Austin here again with another Let's Play video. Today it's going to be Mega Man 5 for the NES. The second to last Mega Man game I need to redo on my channel. So originally, many years ago, I did all the Mega Man games on my channel here as Let's Plays, and prior to that, long plays. But since I've got the retro USB AVS console now, which looks a hell of a lot nicer than my old NES and composite setup, I'm basically going through a lot of the old Let's Plays and re-recording them one by one. And I've done Mega Mans 1 through 4 again as of this year, and now I needed to get to 5 and 6. And so here we go, Mega Man 5. I'm just letting the introduction roll out here. And yeah, this is pretty typical stuff for the Mega Man series on the NES, and we're just gonna basically take a relatively casual playthrough through it. Somewhat casual anyway. I'm gonna try to do Buster only for most of it. I will switch up to a couple of weapons here and there, but for the most part, I just like to play Buster only in these games. It's a lot more interesting to me, and so we're gonna go ahead and do that. So before we actually jump into the game itself, though, as usual, I'm going to give a big shout out to my current Patreon backers, and so they're going to go ahead and flash by the screen. Thank you guys for your direct patronage. Likewise with the recent live stream super chatters and channel members. So thank you guys for your patronage as well. So with that, let's go ahead and hit the start button and jump into the game. And we're just going to sort of randomly pick anybody. It doesn't really matter. Anyone. Oh, and of course, it is Crystal Man. I actually thought about playing Crystal Man first, but I literally just rotated the D-pad around really quickly to do that. So, well, I guess we're playing Crystal Man first then. Crystal Man stage is probably one of the tougher in the game because there are these sections with these dropping crystals from the ceiling with endless pits below them. And so this could be a little tricky to deal with. So, Mega Man 5, obviously the sequel to Mega Man 4, which introduced the charged Mega Buster. Mega Man 5 has sort of, I don't want to say improved on that, but it has expanded on that idea by giving you a much larger Mega Buster. It fills up, you know, it takes up a greater amount of screen space. The enemies in this game also seem to be a little bit weaker to it anyway, because a lot of enemies in this game can be killed in one hit with the charged Mega Buster. Whereas in Mega Man 4, a lot of the enemies would still have a little bit of HP left over. And that is not the case in this game. So we're going to end up basically just charging up a lot in this playthrough, and then killing lots of enemies in one hit, like those skull guys right there. So now there are parts in Mega Man 4 where there are bigger enemies that can be killed in one hit, but it is less common than it is in this game. So that's actually one of my complaints about Mega Man 5, is that while I like the larger Mega Buster, I feel like it's almost too good in this game. So, you know, when I play Buster only, it's still not quite as entertaining as it would be in some other Mega Man games. But, you know, yeah, I was thinking about it the other day, actually. If I really wanted to make this a little more challenging, I could just not use the Charge Buster at all. But then again, Mega Man 5 isn't terribly difficult to begin with. So even if I did it chargeless, it wouldn't really matter all that much. So what we ended up getting there is one of the few, if not the only, M-Tanks in the game. The M-Tank is a new type of energy tank that will give you all of your weapon energy back. And there's also a new thing here. You need to pick up Mega Man 5 letters, and so you basically want to try to spell out Mega Man 5 as you progress through the game. If you do that, you'll acquire one of Mega Man 5's other new additions, which is Beat. And Beat is this little robotic bird buddy that will home in on enemies and whatnot. And he's pretty powerful. We're going to actually try to get him, and we're going to try to use him on the last boss. I don't think I did that in my previous Let's Plays and long plays of this game, so it'll be cool to show that off. So this is Crystal Man, probably one of the tougher bosses in the game if you're not good with dodging lots of projectiles and whatnot. As you can see, there are quite a few projectiles on the screen at the moment. Probably one of my more favorite bosses to play because I have to actually do some more intricate dodging, well, when it comes to, you know, classic Mega Man standards. So, but look at how powerful the Charge Buster is as well. It's quite strong, even on bosses. I mean, in Mega Man 4, it was quite strong too, but in this, it just does a ton of damage. And you know what? It might actually do the exact same amount of damage, and I'm just like fooling myself into thinking it actually does more in this game. It just feels like it does a lot, and so that was Crystal Man stage. Also, I didn't really note, you know, on Crystal Man stage, you'll notice that like the crystals on the ground are flashing different colors and whatnot. And that was always a pretty cool effect. Unfortunately, Mega Man 5 doesn't have a lot of those types of effects in this game. A lot of the backgrounds are just static, with very little going on. And that's another one of my my issues with this game. It's not quite as detailed overall with its background effects and whatnot as some of the earlier Mega Man games are. I always felt like Mega Man 5 was a little potentially rushed compared to some of the others in the series. I mean, I guess technically Mega Man 3 could have been seen as rushed too when you look at the end game, but you know, a lot of the main game in this isn't really extremely exciting to look at, but you know, it is what it is. It is still a good Mega Man game, and I do still recommend playing it if you haven't tried it before. If you don't have an NES, probably one of the best ways to play this these days is just getting one of the more modern Mega Man emulated compilations on like PS4, Xbox One, or Switch, or something like that. They look great, they play pretty decently. There's a little bit of input lag on them, but you do have the luxury of save states and stuff like that if you don't want to write down a password and whatnot. But Mega Man 5 on the NES is actually one of the, if not the most expensive Mega Man game on the system, it's one of the most expensive, and it's very, you know, it's not very cost effective to invest in a copy of it, unfortunately, if you do have a real NES. What I recommend doing if you do have real hardware is, you know, trying to check out a flash cart and, you know, playing the game via a flash cart. And same with most of the other Mega Man games on the NES. Well, not most, but I'd say the first one, the fifth one, and the sixth one in particular, those are the most expensive as of doing this video. So, but those more modern Mega Man emulated compilations are actually quite cheap. They're very, very cheap to acquire. So you get these really good, expensive games with some extra features as well, like bonus challenge modes, which is really cool. But yeah, you know, despite some of the things in this game not being up to my liking compared to previous Mega Man games, it is still a good game, and I do still recommend playing it, which is sort of the whole point of that spiel. Here's another letter, and we went ahead and got it. So you have to let these blocks fall down just slightly, and then jump up at just the right time. So, and you don't want to touch these spikes. I know, pretty obvious stuff in a Mega Man game. Spikes usually kill you in one hit in these games, and it is no different here. So we're gonna just kind of do a baby jump up here. And that is that. We're actually getting close to the end of this level too. One other thing that you'll find quite frequently in this game as well is lots of enemies that have shields and whatnot, and can't be destroyed right away. So it's always been another one of my big pet peeves with this game. So there is a little bit of waiting in parts where you probably wouldn't have to wait in lots of other Mega Man games. So I feel like the pacing of this, when you're playing it normally, probably isn't as snappy as it is in some of the other NES Mega Man games. Alright, so with this guy, he'll basically fly off the top of the screen, and, okay, would you stop that, please? Thank you. He'll fly off the top of the screen, kind of like that, and then he'll basically just land wherever you are on the screen. And that was like a really bad pattern right there, where he wouldn't do anything. He just sat there and just kept shooting his gyro thing at me. So let's try that again. What I find about Mega Man 5, though, is that it happens, you know, it really happens to just dish out the extra lives like it's Christmas or something. And so, you know, dying a few times in this game, not really a big deal. I'm not really too worried about it. I'm not going for a one life clear or anything like that. And look at that. Why didn't... The bosses in this game confuse me sometimes. I mean, it's good that there is a little bit of randomization to the bosses in this, so things like that can happen. But when things like that happen, and I get the boss fight for free, I just sort of do a facepalm, and I just sort of roll my eyes. I'm like, really, game? Come on. You just handed me that one. I didn't have to do anything that time. So, the AI in this can be a little weird like that, but it's okay. So we'll go ahead and just get this whole right-hand side knocked off. So we'll do Napalm Man right now. But yeah, so one of the things about this game as well is that, you know, you do have two different castles at the end of the game. So you've got a fake Proto Man. So the story goes that there's a fake Proto Man rolling around, basically framing the original Proto Man for something or another. I don't really get invested in Mega Man's stories, to be honest with you. But that's the deal, and so as such, you have to go through a Proto Man castle before you go to the Dr. Wily castle at the end. So there is a Proto Man castle and there is a Dr. Wily castle afterwards as well. Then the typical boss rush and whatnot, and then the final boss. These things right here, you gotta watch out because they can actually kill you in one hit. I actually made that mistake the other day in one of my practice sessions, just running straight into them just to see. You can also go through these blocks right here. Just keep mashing the jump button. Notice that Mega Man will just bump into the ceiling, and then that's how you can tell how high you can go there and where you can go and where you can't. This water here does have some, there are some water physics involved here. Notice that Mega Man's getting pushed to the right a little bit. So you've got to watch out for that. There are a couple points in the game where there are objects that will push you one way or the other. And so if you're just holding right and just running through the level, it might actually speed you up unexpectedly if you're not paying attention to the flooring. So you do need to watch out for the flooring in this game. Let's see how many E-tanks we have. We have 3, and then 5 lives, and then 1 M-tank. We'll probably end up using the M-tank towards the end of the game. These guys, you gotta shoot them in the eyeballs. But the M-tank is really good, and, so when you go to Proto Man's castle, when you use sub-weapons, they don't actually replenish when you go into Dr. Wily's castle. So having the M-tank will actually be really handy for that point in the game, where my weapon energy is not replenished between castles. And this part has a bunch of these missile things. You just want to shoot them, or in reality, it's good to just kind of avoid them as well. I'm going to go ahead and just try to take this guy out. These guys are pretty annoying. Like, how high they go up on the screen just seems to be a total crapshoot. So, definitely a little bit irritating to deal with. And we're going to go ahead and just slide down there like that. And now we've got a section where we've got these things coming up from the ground, or not really the ground, but the endless pits. Very much like Mega Man 4, this was a gameplay element that sort of started with that one. You had these little guys pop up in that game, but at least you could kill them in that game. I don't think you can kill these things in this game. So, notice how they just keep blinking. Maybe they have a certain amount of health and they can be destroyed, but it's not looking like it. Let's go ahead and just use an energy tank. We're going to get quite a few over the course of the game, so we're going to go ahead and just, save a life and use the E-tank. One thing I do like about this game is, the boss fights are, I'd say they're decent. I don't think they're the best in the series, but they're definitely more interesting than the ones in Mega Man 6. Like, I actually really have to move around quite frequently. Like Napalm Man here will just jump right up in front of you, and he shoots out these projectiles that you have to jump over. You can probably slide under them as well, just like that. I'd personally recommend just jumping over them. This seems to be a little bit easier. And there we go. So it's a good thing we use the energy tank, because I would have died there. Alright, so 3 Robot Masters down, 5 more to go, and then we'll go to Proto Man's castle. Alright, we'll just do Starman. Starman's one of those guys that I usually start off with first because the level's not too difficult, and the boss really isn't that difficult either. But, one thing I've been doing lately with my Mega Man games, regardless of which Mega Man it is basically just trying to do some sort of faux randomizer thing. Like, I'll look away from the screen, rotate the D-pad around quite a bit, and then just hit one of the buttons to select a Robot Master. Then just pretty much go with, whoever I can. I play these Mega Man games so many times over the years that it's one way to, make things a little more interesting for me. It's always entertaining in Mega Man 2 trying to play, say, like Quick Man first, or in Mega Man 3 doing Needle Man first, or Shadow Man, without being able to rely on sub-weapons that might help you on those fights. Those are some notoriously difficult fights in those in that earlier Mega Man game. So this level has a gravity mechanic, which pretty much operates just like the water mechanic. It's just you're in space now. You're not in water or underwater. So very much like other Mega Man games, you got to avoid these spikes because they will kill you in one hit, as I said before. And we're just gonna slide under those guys just like so. And for these guys, you can just use your Charge Buster. It's so large that, they don't even have to pop out of the ground for it to, do damage to those guys. These walkers here, you just gotta shoot them in the glowing weak spot on their head. And now we've got some rising and falling platforms. I'll basically just do I'll basically just do a full charge here and then kill these guys one by one. Just like so, just like that. Not very complicated, not very difficult to deal with. And here's another walker, and here is the boss fight. So already at the boss, not a very long level. And so this guy basically has this star shield that rotates around him, and then what he does is he'll he'll basically stop in place and then fire it out at you, just like so. Now what he does, his patterns can be a little irritating as well. He has a tendency of just bouncing back and forth like an idiot, and so you're just kind of at the mercy of him. But fortunately, he's giving me some good patterns right now where he's not just bouncing all over the place like crazy without shooting out his stars. If he doesn't shoot his stars, you can't do any damage to him with your buster, so it's pretty much mandatory for him to throw it out at me in order to open up his weak spot. Now, one thing I haven't noted yet is that, and I believe this started with this game, I don't think it happened in Mega Man 4, but when you take a hit, when you're charging, you'll actually lose your charge, and it's one of the things that I guess makes sense from a design perspective in that, you know, the charge buster is really powerful, so, you know, it's a punishment for getting hit while you're trying to charge, but, you know, I don't believe Mega Man 4 did that, and, you know, I don't believe Mega Man X did that either. And by it making you lose your charge, I find that it actually slows down the pace of the game much more than I would like. It doesn't really make it more exciting, but it doesn't really make it that much more difficult either, because not a lot of the bosses in this game are actually really all that hard. You know, we're not talking like Elecman in Mega Man 1, or again Shadow Man in Mega Man 3 or something like that. There's really nothing in this game that is quite up to those levels, so, you know, losing your charge in this really isn't all that big of a deal. It just slows things down, and it's always been another one of my big issues with this game. So, but it is something to keep in mind as well. You know, if you do rely on your charge attack, you know, that is something you've got to keep in mind. You will lose it. Alright, so this level is kind of interesting, actually. For one, I like the background scrolling. It's actually kind of interesting. Not something you see in a lot of these Mega Man games. So that's always kind of cool. Something that I oftentimes miss, too. A lot of times I don't notice the background scrolling differently to the foreground. But you've also got this this reverse gravity mechanic, if you will, where you could basically walk upside down on the ceiling, a lot like Capcom's own classic arcade game Strider, which we're going to try to do an arcade Let's Play of sometime soon. So watch out for that. That should be a good one. So there is going to be another Mega Man letter here, which is going to involve you having to basically, you know, flip one way to the other at just the right time. It's right here. Bam, just like that. Now you do also have Rush Coil and Rush Jet. We got Rush Jet already, and we could probably, yeah, we could have just gotten it with Rush Coil. It doesn't really matter, but I like getting it without Rush Coil. It's a little more interesting. Another extra life. This game just really dishes out the extra lives. Kind of reminds me of, like, it must have been my last Let's Play of Mega Man 3, where we just got a ton of extra lives on that playthrough as well. And boss time. Oops. I released my charge in the wrong direction, so this boss isn't too bad either. But he basically has the same you know, upside down mechanic or reverse gravity mechanic. And what I like to do is just sort of sit away from him, because what he has a tendency of doing is doing his attack or doing his change direction thing when you're right on top of him. You'll try to flip sides. I don't recommend trying to flip sides. I recommend just staying on one side like this. Notice that, you know, he reverses directions quite a bit, and every time he reverses directions, you reverse directions too. And if you're trying to cross over him constantly, you're going to end up running right into him when he does that that gravity switch. So, yeah, I recommend just staying on one side of the screen or the other, trying not to cross him. He has a tendency of just moving back in the other direction if he gets close to you, so. So a lot of the sub-weapons in this game I also find aren't quite as useful. They're not quite as handy as they are in some of the other Mega Man games. And so that's another reason I don't really ever use them in this game. Like Charge Man here, when we defeat him, we'll basically be able to do like this, you know, this slide attack, which will sort of cut through enemies, but not all that useful. Stone Man, I believe, has these stones that fly around in like a 360-degree nature. It's a little difficult to, you know, aim properly with that. And there's just a whole lot of weapons in this game that are like that, that I just find to be a little underwhelming, not all that fun to use. So it's yet another reason why I do Buster only here. And looks like we got a little bit of glitching here. That's probably my AVS. My AVS has issues with, seems like certain memory mappers. And so I just kind of put up with it. It's not really a big deal. Hopefully things like that get fixed in later firmware updates, but it is definitely an issue in a couple of games like, well, obviously Mega Man 5, Shatterhand. I noticed it a little bit in Battle of Olympus the other day when we were actually trying to practice that on Twitch. That's a tough one, man. I used to play that a lot as a kid, but a little frustrating as an adult. But hopefully we can wrap that up, do a couple more playthroughs, and then do a YouTube stream of it afterwards. So here we go, we got chickens, just shoot them in the face. This game really likes you shooting things in the face, apparently. And so we're going to go ahead and just use Rush Coil right here as well. Just wait for this guy to come down so we can kill him, and then we're going to go ahead and just use Rush Coil to grab this. A lot of these Mega Man letters really aren't that complex to get. A couple of them you do have to know exactly where they're going to pop up though, otherwise you'll miss them. And then you'll probably have to kill yourself to... You'll have to kill yourself to try again. Now, I don't remember if you can actually get back into these levels after you finish them. I don't remember. I actually meant to test that in my practice sessions or look up a walkthrough or something, but I never did. So if any of you guys know the answer to that, definitely post a comment down below and let me know. And let me know it's a response to my question, because if you don't, years later, I'm going to totally forget I even asked this question, and I'll be like, dude, what is this guy doing? He's just trying to, like, prove me wrong on everything. When in reality, in the video itself, I asked the question outright. Please, please leave a comment. That's the problem with doing all these Let's Plays, is half the time I completely forgot what I've even said in my own videos, because I do so many videos. This week alone, I've recorded 3 Let's Plays. This is my 3rd one, actually, and I might even do a 4th. So, yeah, lots of content, and lots of things I've said. So I was actually getting some bad patterns on this guy. He was doing his attack, which throws projectiles up in the air, and then they come back down, and they were just landing right on top of me. Which means I would take a hit and not be able to release my charge attack, because I would lose my charge attack. But this is probably one of the trickier bosses in the game, because you've got to get your timing just right on him. Oops. And, you know, one other thing about Mega Man 5 is that pretty much none of the bosses have unique arenas. Every boss in the game, or every robot master in the game, your main 8 bosses, have these perfectly square rooms. Not really perfectly square, but you know what I mean. They're just like these rectangular, square-like rooms that they don't really have any alterations in the platform height or anything like that. You know, it's not like Sparkman's level in Mega Man 3, or Snake Man's in Mega Man 3, or Pharaoh Man's in Mega Man 4, or something like that. You know what I'm saying? So, it's one of those things where, you know, the boss fights I don't think are quite as interesting, you know, in certain cases because of that alone. But Charge Man there was actually, you know, one of those boss fights where the completely flat floor actually worked out quite well because of his attack style, so it actually worked fine for him. So you got these cracks in the ground, and I'm just going to go ahead and take a hit. I don't care. Too much waiting. We're going to try to jump over that as well, grab that, and then fall down here. We basically get sucked into a tube, Sonic 2 style. And there's another extra life. And there's actually, you know, a pretty neat mechanic in this that was reused in some of the more modern Mega Man games. Like, I think it was reused in Mega Man 9 on Splash Woman's stage, where basically bubbles will come up from the ground, and then you can stand on them, and you have a nice little smooth vertical scrolling section. Although in this it's a lot easier than the one in Mega Man 9 because you don't have any enemies coming out at you while it's happening, whereas in Mega Man 9 you had enemies coming out from both sides at very specific points. We actually did a Mega Man 9 Let's Play earlier this year. I really enjoyed the game. It was my first completion of the game, I believe, since it had come out, and it had been a really long time since I had played through it, and I had a really good time with it, so I recommend checking out that Let's Play if you guys are interested in that. So the next Mega Man letter is going to be here, so we're going to have to just watch out for it and then jump at just the right time. You are going to have some airborne enemies as well, and then guys come out behind you. And this is sort of a precursor to some like the vehicle moments in Mega Man X, the Mega Man X series, which is kind of cool. So Mega Man 5 did have some cool new features in it. It's probably not the most interesting to play, though. It's actually quite basic stuff. You know, despite it being cool, it's still not one of my favorite sections to play in the game because it's actually quite simple. It's quite easy to go through, so it's not all that interesting for me personally. And this is the section where we have to get the Mega Man letter. So just jump behind that guy, and you can't actually use your, you know, your charge attack here. You can't actually go to your pause menu either to switch sub-weapons, so you're basically stuck with the firepower on this thing. Notice how I'm just tapering my shots? I'm not mashing the button, I'm just tapering them. So when enemies land on the screen, they're more likely to hit one of my bullets. And I don't have to mash. I'm not like mashing the button really hard like this. Ugh. So if you just taper your shots one by one, bam, 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 it actually makes life easier on you. It makes your hand, well, it makes it so your hand doesn't hurt, and it's more likely enemies are going to land on the bullets. And that's a way of making enemies land on bullets without you having to be super accurate with your shots, like analyzing their jump arc and where they're going to land and stuff like that. So this guy actually, kind of interestingly, you can sort of shoot over his splash here. If you get it just right. Let's see if we can get it. And still hit him in the head. I'm trying to do it. And I'm mistiming it big time. Totally mistiming it. No. Well, we're not getting it. Not a big deal. And we're gonna go ahead and just die too. We have so many lives, man. So many lives. And actually, I could have avoided that if I did a dash or a slide, but I didn't. So, you know, we ended up eating a life for that. Not a big deal. We still have 8 lives left. 9 lives is actually the maximum in this game. So if you go over 9, it doesn't count. So, what we've actually just done there is given us the opportunity to get another extra life. But yeah, in my practice session on Twitch, I was able to shoot the projectile just over him enough to where it would still hit him in the head. And it looks like it's not working right now. Unless it's something that is like a quirk with the boss rush, because we were doing it on the boss rush. We weren't doing it on the main level itself. Or the boss fight for the main level itself. But yeah, this guy can be a little annoying. His water spout there, if you want to call it that, you know, it sort of just comes up at random. There's really no rhythm or rhyme to it as far as I can tell. So it might come like right in front of you, it might come right on top of you, it might pop up like on the other side of the screen, you just don't really know. And depending on where it pops up, it can make things a little difficult with his projectile that he shoots out. He always does the water spout, then shoots a projectile, and then jumps immediately after. So he's actually one of the trickier bosses in the game, if you ask me. Trickier as in like one of the more inconsistent bosses with his patterns and whatnot. A lot of the other bosses are pretty consistent, but that guy was not, unfortunately. So, all right, last level, and then we're on to the Proto Man stages. So for these guys, I'm just going to try to jump over them because they're a little irritating to deal with. They basically split up into these 3 smaller versions of themselves. This level is also where we're going to get our last Mega Man letter. And then we should be able to use Beat after that. I'm not going to actually use Beat until the end of the game. We're going to use him on the on Wily's final form. But you get the letter right here. You basically bust open those blocks, and there it is. And there we go. So now we've got Beat. You notice how it used to say Mega Man 5 down there, but now it doesn't. It just says Beat. Actually, you know what? I'll go ahead and pull out Beat just to show you, since he's here. And he basically just homes in on enemies and, you know, will help me out. So let's just pull him out again. He actually doesn't use that much ammunition either, so he's actually, you know, pretty handy. Pretty handy little dude. And just like that. Alright, let's just switch back. Another extra... Oh, we actually pushed the extra life off the screen. So this game's memory isn't that great. Enemies will respawn the second you push them off the screen. Extra lives and other power-ups, if you push those off the screen, will also disappear. But it looks like we actually just got another extra life, which is good. So we've got 9 lives, so we're maxed out on lives again. And we can bust through here as well if you want. There's not really anything there, so... Nothing to see or do there, aside from kill some enemies. There's going to be an energy tank coming up here as well, which will be nice, because I ended up using one on one of the earlier boss fights. So we'll get to replenish that. Another extra life. Of course, we're at 9 lives, doesn't really matter. And we're just gonna skip that one because we can't even do anything with it. It's not gonna do us any good. Alright, so next E-Tank is right here. And I'm gonna go ahead and just jump up like that, and now we have to actually walk over this way to respawn the moving platform. Same with that one, so we have to keep going all the way over here. Now it should be back. And there it is, and now we can work our way back up. Another E-Tank, very nice. Thanks, guy. So if I wanted to, I could actually, you know, replenish Beat with this, just like that. And let's go ahead and just switch back over. Buster only. You know, I didn't really need to get that with Beat because I'm not even going to be using him. But not a big deal. And let's just jump down this way. Just like that. Just trying to sort of squeeze my way through this level as quickly as possible. And it's boss time. And then we're gonna be onto our 2 castles. And then that'll be Mega Man 5 in the bag. And then it'll be on to Mega Man 6 sometime soon, hopefully, so I can have all those NES Mega Mans ironed out on my channel again. For like I think this is actually the 4th time I played these on my channel, because I originally did dedicated long plays of these games. And then I did dedicated Let's Plays of these games. And then I did live streams of these games. And now I'm doing dedicated Let's Plays again. So 4 times on this channel. Not counting the other times I play the game on Twitch and so forth. And I'm really mistiming my attacks here, because when he goes into his like little rock mode where he sort of just like crumbles into the ground, you can't hurt him. All your shots will reflect off of him. So, you know, he's got a very specific window where he can actually be damaged. And so the Proto Man and Wily castles are definitely the most dangerous parts of the game. There are some relatively tricky parts I'll try to explain once we get into there. You got Power Stone. It's the name of the arcade and Dreamcast game, which came out many, many, many years later. Fantastic game, by the way. I've also got a Let's Play on that. Shameless self-promotion. So 1, 2, 3, 4 levels here, and then we've got a similar amount of stages on Wily's castle. If I remember correctly, I think Wily's castle might even be a little bit shorter than Proto Man's castle in terms of, you know, the stage length. And these guys can be really annoying, which is why I recommend just charging up like this and just killing them in one hit. So just wait and charge up. Oh, you gotta be kidding me, man. And we're dead. Yeah, so those guys can be really dangerous if you let them move, but the idea is just to kill them in one hit, and I'm not really paying attention right now. It must be all the freaking magenta in the background. One of the things about this game, it's always been kind of goofy to me, to be honest with you, is like how much it relies on like a pastel-like color palette. And it's very different from the other Mega Man games on the NES. It's very, very different. And I messed up again. And I'm having a hard time, like, walking back and forth. Like, when I'm shooting in one direction and turning around and shooting in the other direction. I don't seem to have that issue in other Mega Man games. I don't know if there's something going on with this game in particular. I don't know what the deal is with that. There we go. Killed him in one hit, like I should have the other times. Could just be that I'm really tired and I'm just not playing well, which is entirely possible. I'm gonna go ahead and just try to trigger that guy early. These guys actually trigger with you just getting somewhat close to them, getting close to their vicinity. So we also got this arrow, which actually lets us, you know, use it as a set of platforms, which is kind of cool. It does have ammunition, so you will run out if you use it too much. But I'm not gonna worry about the amount of ammo I have on it right now. And these guys always drop a set of 3 missiles into the ground, and so a couple different ways you can do this. You can actually use Rush Jet. I recommend using Rush Jet, because then that can happen. If you don't use Rush Jet, then you might end up taking a hit, or you might end up falling into the spikes. And let's just come down this way. Another extra life, which I could actually use that time. Thanks to those white tigers. And I'm going to try to jump over here and grab this. If you try to fall straight down and land into that cubby, it doesn't seem to work. So you need to fall onto that platform to the right and then jump over to grab the health. And I don't know why he rejected that attack, but if I kill him here, he's going to spawn right back in. Yep, see, there he is. That's how bad the memory is in this game. So as such, I'm just going to go right through him, because he sort of got me into a bad position, all because my shot rejected. That can be a little annoying as well. So we also have these disappearing platforms. We're going to go ahead and just skip right through them. This is the easiest way to deal with these sections. And what I like to do is try to get Rush on the corner here, and just squeeze my way through those things. And we're going to go ahead and just replenish the Rush Coil energy, because I know I'll have to use it again later on in these levels. Remember that your weapon energy doesn't replenish itself between castles. So that's both between levels in the castles, but also the separate castles themselves. So Proto Man's castle versus Wily's castle. So Proto Man's castle has a very specific boss theme going on. You've got variations of kind of the same thing happening here. And for this guy, you basically just shoot him, and then he shoots back. So he's not really that hard to deal with. But these guys hit like tanks. So you've really got to watch out for that. And there we go. One boss down. A few more to go. So the other ones that we have to fight will have these shields that sort of like rotate in and out, and they'll block your projectiles if you shoot at the wrong time. Alright, so we're going to come up this way, and then take the left-hand ladder, because the right one is basically a dead end. And we're we're just going to come up this way, wait for these guys to come down. We're going to kill these guys first. Kind of like that, and then I'm just going to use my rush coil since I have more energy for it than the arrow. And then switch back to the Buster. So these little train guys, they're shielded as well at first. And so what I like to do is usually just, you know, shoot them with my Buster. Just taper my shot again, and then usually what happens is the second their weak spot is open, or the second they're vulnerable to a shot, you know, my tapering of my shots will kill them, like, pretty much right away. These guys drop these projectiles, and this is another one of those sections where you gotta look at the flooring, because the flooring determines how fast you go in one direction. Like, this one is pushing you to the right, this one's pushing you to the right, this one's pushing you to the left. So if you're just trying to bolt through that section, you've really got to be watching those platforms, otherwise you're going to actually slip off and fall to your death. And we can just skip that guy. There's no real reward or anything like that in this game for just killing, you know, all the enemies and whatnot. And I actually messed that up. I was trying to land on that platform as it moved, so I can get that weapon energy, but it's not really a big deal. Not going to worry about it too much. A couple different things you can do here. You can get this E-tank. You have to make sure you pull away right away, otherwise you'll touch those spikes and die. So a little bit of tight timing there, which is nice. You can grab this health as well, and then do the same thing. Just pull back right away. And we're going to take the top route here. Just fall straight down. And if I wanted to, I can grab that extra life, but I don't need it. I actually don't need it. Use our full charge attack here to kill these guys in one hit, like so. Sometimes you can kill 2 for 1. So these guys I didn't really explain, but they're also shielded until they activate. And then once they activate, you can shoot them. So lots of enemies in this game that have that shield mechanic, whether they've got an actual shield or not. So that can be a little irritating about this game. I really like how in a lot of the other Mega Man games, enemies aren't really shielded that often. There are still shielded enemies in a lot of Mega Man games, but it's not as common as it is in this game. It's very, very common in this game. So for this guy right here, you need to try to shoot him when his shields are within him. When they're outside, he's gonna reflect your shots. And jumping over him can actually be a little tricky at first. It's the timing is a little strict. It's not that strict, but it is strict to an extent, and I'm surprised I actually haven't gotten a hit yet. So, nice fight, I'll take that. So, no damage. Alright. These guys that fly in the sky, they can be a little erratic as well, so they can be quite tricky to deal with. It might be wise to use a sub-weapon if you're that kind of player, but we're going mostly Buster only in this playthrough, so I'm not going to worry about busting out, oh, no pun intended, busting out a different sub-weapon. Yeah, these levels honestly aren't all that dangerous, to be frank. Like, actually, you know what? We're gonna have to end up using a special weapon to get up here now. Oh, look, you can go back. That's interesting. Usually in Mega Man games like this, once you've gone onto a new screen, you can't go back to a previous screen. So what I ended up doing is using this platform by accident, and they disappear. And I thought I was gonna have to use, you know, rush coil or something like that to get up. Yeah, I found that, you know, Mega Man 5 is probably actually one of the easier Mega Man games in the series. It just requires a little bit of patience. You just really have to wait for the enemies to open up. Like these guys, you just have to wait. Come on. Now they're open. Wait. Open. Shoot. It's just like that. Rinse and repeat. It's very basic stuff. A lot of projectiles enemies shoot can be destroyed. Like so. is not exactly rocket science. I think that's another reason why Mega Man 5 is always kind of sat on the bottom of my list as one of my least favorite, because it's not all that interesting for me to play more, you know, for the most part. It's really not that difficult. I can just blaze right through the game, Buster only, without even thinking about it. I mean, I could do that in other Mega Man games. I can't really knock Mega Man 5 for that specifically. But, it definitely doesn't really give me a whole lot of a challenge. Now, I've actually talked to a couple friends, and they say that speedrunning this game is a lot more interesting. And I'm going to need to check out a speedrun of it to see what they do. So that could be interesting to check out. So if any of you guys have experience with that, definitely let me know in the comments. So what I should have done is actually walked in the opposite direction, but I'm not going to really worry about it too much. You can actually kill multiples of these guys in one hit, but I'm completely mistiming it, so much for that. I'm gonna try to slide under this guy just like that. Grab the E-Tank. How many E-Tanks do we have? 7. Very nice. Very nice. Alright, getting close to the end of this level. There we go, that's the end. And we get to fight one more of these guys, and we have one more stage. This guy can actually be pretty tricky. He's got these, you know, this machine gun, sort of. And then he's also got this attack that'll freeze you in place. So you really don't want to get hit by that attack, because then he'll jump up, hit you pretty much guaranteed, and he'll do a ton of damage to you. There you go. Alright, so in this level you gotta bust open these blocks, and every time you do that, the whole screen will basically scroll down. And you can actually get crushed here, so you have to watch out for that. And so the best thing to do is just let them fall all the way down, and then you can basically slide underneath them. And we slide under that, and pretty much straight to the boss fight. So pretty short level. I kind of wish that stage was longer, because it's one of the more interesting sections in the game, if you ask me. And basically, fake Proto Man is going to hit us, and then real Proto Man is going to come in and save the day. And then we'll get all our health back. Mega Man is definitely not the smartest one of the lot, that's for sure. But here we go. So this boss is sort of a mixture of some of the other ones that we fought already. And what I like to do is just wait for him to basically spread his... Oh, this is actually the boss I was thinking of. Sorry, I got him confused with Wave Man. See, you can actually still hit him just like that, even if his shields are right in front of him. You shoot just slightly high enough over his head, and your fully charged Mega Buster will go over the shields and still make contact with him. Even with your regular shots too, it looks like. But probably the best way to do it is to just wait for these shields to just fly off of him from both sides. Kind of like that, and bam, he's done. Yeah, for some reason I was getting that confused with, you know, with Wave Man or whatever earlier. So, yeah, that was my mistake, my fault. Not a big deal. Alright, it's a little bit of exposition, and then we go to the Wily's castle. Which has some tricky platforming here and there, but for the most part it's not too bad. And then we'll do a boss rush, and then we'll fight Wily himself, which actually also isn't too bad of a boss fight. And then that'll be it. So we're almost there, guys. Almost there. 50 minutes in. Yeah, the thing about Let's Playing some of these later Mega Man games is they do take a little while to go through. So a lot of my Let's Plays recently have been like 30 or 40 minutes tops, but this is already a little bit longer than some of the other playthroughs. So we'll probably end around the hour and 10 mark, I'm guessing. It's probably going to take us 20 minutes to go through this. And there's no way to skip through this, unfortunately, so you're just kind of stuck here. Dr. Wily in watercolor. Yeah, the use of pastel-like colors in this is just kind of crazy to me. Like, you look at some of the other Mega Mans, and then you look at this, and the colors are so bright in certain areas, like uncomfortably bright in certain areas. So this part, you really want to land on this platform right here, and you want to jump left. You don't want to jump right, but then you want to hold right to come down here. Otherwise, you end up, you know, killing yourself in the spikes. And there we go. So again, like I said, when you switch castles, your weapon energy is still left basically the same as it was before, so you have to watch out for that. Make sure you're not using certain types too much, because you might end up getting stuck if you don't have enough, say, Rush Coil or the Arrow, or Rush Jet. Now, what's nice about this game is you don't have to use a very specific boss sub-weapon to defeat Wily. It's unlike, you know, a lot of the previous Mega Man games, Mega Man 2, 3, and 4, I think all required you to use a very specific sub-weapon in order to beat the final version of Wily. That's not the case in this game. So you can actually get to Wily, use your charged buster, and that's it. This is another one of those sections, though, where, you know, the platforms are rotating one way or the other, and if you're not careful, they'll basically just push you right off. That's actually some really tight jumping up top there to get across those two rotating platforms. And here's a throwback to Mega Man 4, the compactor stage. So just like Mega Man 4, we're just going to bust these open and mess up. My bullet went over that block. It should have actually made contact with it, but it didn't. It flew right past it. And because it's a Mega Man game, the checkpoints aren't entirely kind. So that is something you gotta worry about as well. And that's why you take the top route as well. You don't take the bottom route. We actually would have been fine in the bottom route, but I really was just really rushing. And that's what happens when you rush in a game like this. You pay the price. Try to get this jump again. Yeah, see, it's actually a very, very tight jump. It's really tough to get. I'm surprised I got it the first time. Alright, so let's try this again. Alright, there we go. So if you wanted to, you can actually use this part to grind out on power-ups and whatnot. Kind of like this. Not really worth it, but if you really need to, the option is there. I think, honestly, that's why a lot of these enemies were placed the way they were in this game, and other Mega Man games, particularly on like the Wily stages and whatnot. A lot of Mega Man games would do that. They'd have enemies with constantly respawning little guys that pop out, and they would drop, you know, power-ups and so forth. So they basically give you the option to grind out. So it's one of the things about the Mega Man series, and it's not just this one or a couple of the other ones, it's basically the whole series, is, you know, you've always had the option to grind out in these games. To basically, you know, replenish your upgrades. Alright, so for this guy, you need to shoot his platforms here, and then shoot him in the eye. Now, when he closes his eyes, he's actually blocking your shots, and if you don't shoot high enough, like I just did right there, you will also brick, unfortunately, so... Yeah, see, I mistimed that as well. I was just waiting for him to close his eyes, but I completely mistimed that. And obviously, if you touch the spikes on the side of him, you'll actually take damage as well, which we've done a couple times now. And there we go! One boss down. Alright, so we're getting really close to the end of the game now. And this part has a pretty tight jump. You need to jump right on the edge, otherwise you'll land on those spikes and you will die. Another energy tank. We have a lot of energy tanks now. Actually, more than I think we would really ever need in the game. So some more spinning platforms there that you gotta watch out for. It's a mechanic that's used multiple times over the course of this game. In a lot of other Mega Man games where this mechanic appears, it only happens usually once, maybe twice, but in this game it actually happens several times, maybe 3-4 times over the course of the game. So it's kind of interesting they reuse that mechanic quite a bit here. And I'm not complaining. It is a mechanic that sort of requires me to think a little bit. And as you can tell, we're back underwater again. So whenever I'm underwater or I'm in, in like low gravity scenarios or something like that, like on Starman's stage, I will basically just try to jump up as high as I can when I see ladders and whatnot. It lets me get past the ladders a little bit faster. And we're just gonna fall straight down here. Just gonna make sure those aren't areas where enemies pop up from the pits. That's one thing about Mega Man 4 and 5 is you do have to worry about that. Here's also a strategy for this part. We're gonna actually go ahead and just use our Star Crash here. So this is the weapon, and kind of like Woodman, you can actually shoot it in ahead. So let's go ahead and use Rush Jet right here, and I'd like to jump and use it so I can actually get a little bit higher. And then I try to jump a little bit early. And we're gonna go ahead and just use this again. These guys are really tough to deal with without doing this. Alright, and boss time. We might end up using an E-Tank here. Let's see. So this guy basically, floats to the left and right, and he shoots these balls out up top. And then he'll basically dive bomb you, kind of like this. Now, the thing about the balls that he shoots out up top is sometimes they can be difficult to see that they've even come out, because he'll basically eclipse the top of the screen, and you actually won't be able to see the balls popping out. Let's go ahead and use an E-Tank, just like so. And there we go. So this is gonna be our final, not really final, real level. This is the boss rush stage, basically, which is an obligatory feature featured in most, if not all, Mega Man games. And what I found kind of interesting about the boss rush feature in this, which is yet another reason why I almost feel like this game was sort of hastily put together at certain points, is they warp you right back to the original boss's levels for them. They didn't even create like a custom, unique, final area, boss rush room like they did in other Mega Man games. So here we are back to the you know, back to the original level here. Which makes these guys feel even extra, like, tacked on than they normally are in the, you know, as boss rushes. I don't mind the boss rushes personally, but yeah, after it's been done many, many times in the series, it does kind of, like, overstay its welcome. It's one of those mechanics that definitely overstays its welcome. And see, that was a crap pattern right there. And then he goes into his rage mode, and I can't even hit him. Then he charges, and I can't even hit him. So, you know, if you get out of, like, a nice little rhythm with these guys, they can be kind of annoying to deal with the randomization in play. And we'll just sort of taper our shot like that. And hopefully we can do better on this one. So again, just watch out for the gyro that comes down, and then the second it comes down, you want to just start dashing in a direction. So what I usually do is I won't move anywhere until the gyro actually comes down. Sometimes it'll land right on top of you, so you do run that risk. But as long as you avoid it, he's just going to try to fall right down to wherever you are in the screen. So you just move in the opposite direction, and then he falls down. He'll miss you pretty much guaranteed. So that was a good fight, unlike the first one we had to do with him early on in the playthrough. And back to Napalm Man again. And there we go. Oh, a little bit of input lag there because of the all the slowdown on the screen. So that is something that can happen in some of these old NES games in particular, and it's not relegated to just NES games. I've seen it in Genesis and Super Nintendo and other games as well. But in some games when a lot of slowdown happens, your inputs can get eaten, or they can lag severely, and that's actually what just happened in that boss fight, which was a little irritating. So it actually ended up making me take a hit that I might not have taken. It's not something that happens a lot in this game, to be honest. One thing I do have to give this game credit is that there's not as much slowdown as there is in other Mega Man games. And here we go. He's just, you know, bouncing back and forth, which is kind of like the pattern you don't want him to be in. You want him to jump straight up and unleash his stars. Come on. I would imagine, like, speedrunning this game, this guy would be an RNG nightmare. So for those of you guys out there that do actually speedrun this game, that are for some odd reason still watching me, I'd imagine it's really hard to, as a speedrunner, watching a non-speedrunner play the game. But if you have any experience with that, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on some of the RNG in this game, which would probably make this game kind of frustrating to speedrun. And there we go. Yeah, see, this guy's giving me bad patterns too, where his water is just appearing right in his face, which makes it hard to hit him without being on the other side of him. But because of the nature of this boss, you're never on the other side of him. You're always on, you know, I always slide underneath him. And just like before, we're going to try to stay on the opposite side of the screen, unless we are cornered like that, like we just were. And I'm completely missing here. Sometimes it's tough to avoid his shot, too. He shoots at this very odd angle. Also, if you know, are trying to slide and you're on the ceiling, you have to actually hold up, not hold down. So your controls are reversed, too. It's a little awkward. I'm just gonna go ahead and shoot him normally, just like that. You know, when you shoot him normally with the Buster, it takes a lot longer, obviously, but when they've only got 1 or 2 pellets left, sometimes it's better to do that. So Wily here will smash down on us, and we need to jump up and then release our shot at just the right time, otherwise it'll get rejected just like that. Alright, so now we're basically going to be on to the final boss, which is a couple more forms of Wily. And then, like I said, on the final form here, we're going to go ahead and use Beat, which will make the final boss, or the final form of Wily, much easier. I almost feel like that was the intent of Beat, or maybe it really wasn't when they created Beat. Maybe they just wanted to create, you know, another little side character that would be fun. But they ended up, you know, also enabling him on the final boss as well. Alright, so here it is. And he basically shoots these bouncing balls and these missiles, which also in and of themselves seem to be pretty erratic. And he does this sucking motion as well, which sucks you in, so you can just sort of slide in the opposite direction to avoid it. And that's it. So now we're on to actually the final form. And you know what? Let's go ahead and just start off with full health. We have so many energy tanks. And once we use Beat just a little bit, I will I'll use the M tank so you guys can see what that does. And what happens with Beat, he just sort of homes in on the enemies. And then what's cool about this fight, he'll basically tell you where Wily is going to respawn sometimes, and he'll do a free hit, just like that. Come on, dude. And just to demonstrate it, let's go ahead and use the M tank. You'll see it just basically gives us all of our stuff back, which is nice. Beat seems to have a bit of a mind of his own sometimes as well. Come on, dude. There you go. it seems like you might have to be ground-based as well for him to actually do anything. So as long as you're on the ground, it seems like he'll do what he wants. I think the problem was I was just constantly jumping. Yeah, so now that I'm just on the ground, it seems like he's working 100%. Alright, so that's good to know. Good thing we figured that out. So beat basically makes this form of Wily a non-issue. Now you can attack Wily normally. You can use your charge Mega Buster. You could use many of the other sub-weapons. Some of the sub-weapons, I believe, actually reflect off of him. But a lot of the other sub-weapons do work, but they're not very powerful against him. Really, beat is your, you know, your best best form of attack on that form of Wily. So. And that is it. We pretty much beat the game. So now we're going to have a little more exposition and whatnot, a little more story, and then straight into the credits. So there you have it, guys. Mega Man 5 on the NES. So it's basically just going to roll out the credits now. Not really a whole lot else to talk about this game. Like I said, you know, it's actually not really my favorite Mega Man game out there. And as you guys probably noticed in this playthrough, I really just started to just kind of like zone out towards the end of the playthrough. I just kind of like wasn't interested anymore. And that's a lot of times that's what happens when I play this game. It's just not as technically interesting as I think some of the other entries are on the same system. And a lot of the music doesn't really do it for me either compared to the other games. I still like it, I still think it's a good game, and if you guys are Mega Man fans, I do still recommend playing the game. Again, getting the original cartridge is really expensive, but if you have a flash cart on NES, you can play it that way, or you can grab one of the more modern compilations, like the Mega Man Legacy Collection, which is pretty solid, all things considered, and there's some nice bonuses, nice, like, challenge modes that you can do, which really changes things up, so yeah, it's a good way to play this game as well, so. But yeah, I do still recommend it, and, you know, I've said it a lot on stream, but even, like, a bad Mega Man game is still better than most NES games, and, yeah, I don't think this is a bad Mega Man game per se, but I don't think it reaches the same heights of greatness as some of the other ones do on the same system. I know people are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. Everyone's got their opinions, and that's okay. But yeah, those are sort of my final thoughts on this. Yeah, not much else to talk about gameplay-wise or anything like that. I know I didn't really experiment with any of the sub-weapons, but not really a big deal, to be honest with you. I'm sure there are plenty of other playthroughs out there that experiment with them, and this won't be the last time you guys see me play this game on my channel. I'll probably do like a Mega Man NES like marathon run or something where I go through all the Mega Man games in one sitting. That'll probably be like an 8 or 10 hour long stream or something like that, so I was actually going to do that before I did this Let's Play, but I decided I'd focus on these Let's Plays first, so if you guys watch my live streams, definitely watch out for that. I will try to do that in the near future. Should be a fun stream, so everyone that tunes in will get to see pretty much every Mega Man game on the NES. But that is pretty much it. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap things up here, guys. So as usual, you know, if you like the video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up. If you hate everything about life, give it a thumbs down. And if you're new to my channel, definitely consider subscribing. If you like Mega Man videos in particular, much like Castlevania and Doom, I have a lot of Mega Man videos on here, so feel free to look out for those. And, you know, for everyone already subbed, thanks for your continued support. Hope you guys continue to enjoy these videos. And until the next one, take it easy.